Welcome, my friends. Today I wanted to play a little bit with an idea that we as designed machines may still have the design freeze ahead of us. What does it mean? Design freeze is an engineering term where you cease any design activities. You happy with your design efforts, the machine performs to specs, everything is nice and rosy, then you can say, okay, it's done, ready to go, ready for the final task, ready for the market, right? For the consumer. Now, if we consider humans being designed, then we don't really know whether we are designed once and that's it, or we are still being perfected by the designer, and we can see certain signs of this activity in our daily life observations. So I wanted to explain this concept a little bit and then dig into hard numbers and show you some examples because I think it's fascinating. So how to recognize that the design is being perfected, is being changed, and at some point it gets to the plateau and it's done, right? So the easiest way would be to track some features of this design. Well, you can track power consumption, you can track, computational capabilities, physical performance. And what you would see is when the product is being designed, and we have this graph here. So here would be the feature of the design, whatever, let's call it F, any feature, right? And here you have time. If the designer is still working on the product, on the machine, then we would see something like that going on. Yeah, so the feature you will have design reviews, and you will decide to improve this design or to increase certain capabilities or to remove certain things from the design. But definitely the feature, I'm talking about the abstract feature of the design, will keep changing over time, right? Will go down, will go up. However, as we get to the final design freeze, what we're gonna see is that this feature will get to a certain point and it will get stable, right? So from this plateau, you can tell that, well, something is considered done. Then you can track another feature, let's call it F1, and this feature changes over time and then gets to the point and we see this plateau, right? At certain point you get to the third feature and you already know the drill, right? It goes up and down and up and then gets stable. So I would call, even without knowing the details of this design, I would say that what's going on here, it's very likely a design freeze. So let's dig deeper and see how humans and human features change over time and whether we see this design freeze at a certain point in human history. And I will show you actual numbers, hard numbers, and you can judge yourself whether we are in design freeze and our goal, our purpose is coming because we are already prepared. We are perfectly designed according to our designer, because he is not changing those features anymore. That's a signal that probably we see something coming. Okay, let's get to the numbers. I will be talking about several design features, if you will, and a moment in time that is around 1960. Some of those things happened slightly before, slightly after, but I would say the year 1960 would be the year when we see some interesting flattening of the curve I just spoke about, and certain human features become stable. So either they stop growing or they get to this plateau. So I'll be covering several features, and some of them are related to each other, some of them are not, but when you take them together, you see this interesting pattern appearing, that is a flattening of the change. And I'll cover human intelligence in general terms, so we won't be talking only about IQ, but something which is called general ability or general intelligence. So those factors are not well defined, however, they tend to behave in a similar way. So in terms of human intelligence, is not necessarily IQ, it will be also other metrics that we use for human intelligence. I decided to cover some physical features of human body, and I took one which is height, very easy to check, to measure, difficult to commit an error measuring human height. So I'll take this one as a parameter of human body, and several performance parameters, swimming, speed, pole vaulting, high jump, long jump, and javelin records. These are, of course, sport disciplines. And at the end, I will talk a little bit about how the human population changed in the 60s. So as a whole, as a group of biological machines, what has changed also around 1960. Okay, so let's get started. So human intelligence, if you track psychology and intelligence science related to human intelligence, you are probably familiar with something which is called a Flynn effect. So basically, it was a discovery that human IQ, human intelligence grows in time. So each year, humans tend to be a little bit more intelligent than year before. Of course, if you take a decade, this change is more significant. And over the 20th century, we had a steady growth of human IQ, general intelligence, and other factors related to human intellectual ability. However, roughly in the 90s, psychologists noticed that something is not really right with this Flynn effect, and that we are getting a flattening effect. Some even reported reversal of the effect, but the general consensus, I would say, is that we reached a certain plateau. And in the 90s, it was apparent that the growth, the Flynn effect, is not that strong. It's flattening, especially in developed countries. We still see some growth in underdeveloped countries, but in developed countries we see a saturation effect. And this can be confirmed. It's just an example. We have an expert here, Frank Ramus, who is saying in one of his papers that since the 1990s, IQ has been rising more slowly, perhaps reaching a plateau due to the limits of the human brain. So it is well-known fact that the Flynn effect is disappearing slowly. Now you can see here on this graph, this is not probably the best graph. I'll show you other ones, but it shows this effect that in the 90s we have globally we have this change in the slope of the curve, the IQ curve. But I'm gonna show you another data. This is from a Norwegian study that was done on conscripts. So those guys taken by the army were tested, and you see in this graph you see two parameters. One is height. I'll get to this one too, but you see height and general ability or general intelligence. And you see that in the 60s, roughly 1968, the trend breaks and gets a little bit flatter, and around 1988 we see this plateau. Why I'm showing you this graph? Because it's taken on a population that has the same of the same age, right? So each data point is taken on guys that are of the same age, so we don't have this averaging effect of the entire population. So it's interesting that in the 90s the IQ stopped growing and we have this plateau. However, the effect started in the 60s, where the dynamic, the gradient, dropped slightly. So that's, I think, very interesting. But this slide also moves us to another area, which is human size. And you see exactly the same thing, that a human size, and of course on the y-axis we have normalized values. These are not really any units. They are normalized for those two parameters and this population. These are z-scores, but you see almost exactly the same trend for height, right? So intelligence and height saturated, and we have a similar plateau in those two areas. And here we have another graph showing human height, and again this graph, this is global. You see women and men, and this is pretty apparent that in the 60s, I would say 65 maybe, we have, according to this graph, globally we see that human height is stabilizing and going into a plateau. So you have Norwegian studies on young guys, and you have this global study that shows a similar trend, if not identical, which is stunning. Okay, let's talk about performance. And I decided to use sports records to show you how
human performance changes. Of course, these are not average numbers. We have to understand that what I'm showing you here is are the best of the best, right? So people who break world records, win medals, and they are the best of the best. So you can think of it as a top tier of human performance. Nevertheless, you will see a similar plateau-like behavior in many disciplines. I took just several, but you can find more. I'm not saying that all sports performances plateau. There are still some performance criteria or metrics that are being that are growing, and difficult to say why, but probably the type of training or equipment can be a part of the answer here. However, there are definitely some sports which are not that equipment dependent, that show the plateau, the flattening effect. So here you have swimming, 800 meters freestyle, men and women. Something interesting. So in the 80s, we see that this the rapid change in world records stops, and we see almost like a plateau for men, and definitely a plateau for women, with some slight changes, but not really dramatic. And this happened in the 80s. If you take an average age of a swimmer, that would be between 21, 25. This is when they actually achieve the best performance. So they were born about around 1955, 59. So we approaching this magical 1960 date where things has changed for humans. Here you have a pole vault. Again, in the 90s, we see this rapid change in gradient, and very slow, almost like a plateau behavior later on. And now from the 90s, you have to subtract roughly 25 to 30 years. That's the age of the best performers, and this brings us back to 1965. So again, very interesting that we have, you know, around the 1960s, something happened that you know, at that time we produced the best biological machines, and ever since nothing actually has changed, or is not changing much from this moment on. Here we have a lot of sports. As you see, not all of them have an obvious plateau recently, but definitely two disciplines, which is high jump and long jump, which is the blue line. You can see here. So the dark blue line is high jump, and the light blue line is long jump. Both of them achieved a plateau or started to plateau at around 1990. Again, if you take the age of those performance, we are moving back to 1959, 57 maybe, which is similar to other disciplines. Here we have a high jump record, just one, so you can see it pretty clearly. So Javier Sotomayor was 25 years old when he established this record here in the 90s. I think it was 1993, and when he was 25. So again, it brings us back to 1967. He was born around this time. So again, the 60s, something interesting happened. We had the best biological machines produced then, and then we keep on this level, right? We keep going on this level. It does not mean that they were the guys who were the best, and then after them nothing good happened really. It means that they are the first ones who got that good, right? So from that moment, athletes seem to be on a similar level. This design feature is stable, plateaued in 1993 for the high jump. And when you go through sport papers and articles, you will see titles like that we have bigger, stronger, and faster athletes, and still we cannot really break many records. They are kind of locked. There is always a question whether the equipment or type of training or style and the way how you perform certain athletic tasks matter, right? And of course those things matter, but what this graph shows, and you see different points, you have red points, green points, and blue points. They show when a particular technique of this high jump was utilized by athletes. And you do see that when you change the technique, the performance changes as well. But I would argue that even though we had one technique, and I'm talking right now about the flop, that was used for almost 2 decades, or 3 decades, and we saw a steady growth, and at some point this growth was stopped, and we see the saturation. And this saturation is going on for another 3 decades, right? So we see basically when we go back to the beginning of this discipline, which was the beginning of the 20th century, we see almost steady growth. However, we do not see big plateaus. Maybe 1 or 2 that are not even 1 decade long, but we've never seen something like 3 decades of steady performance. So I would argue that yes, all those things like equipment, type of training, and a technique or style, they do matter, but this is the signal of human performance is overwhelming. It shows that at some point the progress is stopped. Another interesting example, this is Javelin, Olympic and world records, and you see that around 1992, 1988, we had records established, and from this date on, for the gold medalists, we have almost a flat curve. However, this trend changed in 1964. The dynamic, similar to the Norwegian study on intelligence and height, something happened. So you have a gradual break of the trend, and then you hit the plateau. So another example, maybe not that clear, but definitely you see the moment when we stop getting those dramatic changes and growth in terms of performance. And let me talk about population changes, because when you look from the design perspective, when you design and test your machine, you need a lot of trials. So you would like to have a lot of examples, a lot of prototypes that you can test. And when you're pretty sure that everything is perfect, then you would freeze this production of prototypes, and especially you will not allow any new introductions of changes, right? Because this can mess up your design freeze. So let's, from this perspective, let's take a look at a human population, and we'll see something interesting. So when you take the population growth, so we have the two curves here, and the green one is world population, and the red one is annual growth rate of the world population. So this is the guys who are born, and minus the guys who died, right? The growth in a particular year. So what happened is that in 1963, and remember, this is around the time when we see this flattening of many parameters of human design. And we see that those features, they are saturated. We see a flat curve. And around this point, around the point where Javier Sotomayor was born, around this point when the IQ of Norwegian soldiers started to flatten, around this point, the growth rate of the world population drops dramatically, as if somebody said, okay, I have enough. I don't want those guys to go crazy with other features. I want to limit the population size and just propagate the best features that are now being introduced. And this is my design freeze, right? So I see 1963 as this almost like a prototype production stoppage. We have enough. We've learned enough. We have a perfect model. Let's freeze the design, and we don't have to make more prototypes. So of course, that's my interpretation. I would love to hear from you what you think about it. But this is, maybe it's just a coincidence, maybe not. Maybe truly something happened in the 60s. Yeah, and another feature on the population level, we have a very interesting letter, and this is Nature. I think I don't know, it's pretty recent. What they say is that the limit of human lifespan we already achieved this limit of human lifespan, and those authors, they show those two curves. This is the blue one, I think it's for women, and red is for men. And you see clearly that around 1960, you have this flattening of this survival rate, if I can call it that. Definitely around this time, we also achieved the limit of human lifespan. So you see that all those things align around 1960, and maybe it's just a coincidence, or maybe it's the point where we started the design freeze, or somebody started the design freeze and said, yeah, those guys are ready. I don't want them to be changing anymore. I want them to freeze the design and just wait for the task. Right. So now we are all painfully aware of this problem, and it's being discussed currently that people don't have too many kids, and fertility trends to drop like crazy. But let's see when it started. Well, surprise, surprise, it started around 1965, where we see that women started to have fewer babies, right? So the last point here is 2017, and I think it keeps going down, as if somebody said, okay, right now I need the best quality machines, focus on teaching and learning and making them the best performance, rather than having tons and tons of prototypes that are going in all directions. Let's spare the resources and have the best of the best. Yeah, so women have smaller families. They can spend more time on a single child. The child has more resources and can achieve his or her limits in terms of intelligence and physical performance. Yeah, and this is just Greenland. Greenland is very fashionable topic these days. So stunningly, the same pattern happens all over the place. I'm showing Greenland just for laughs and giggles, and yeah, same fertility rate drop. That's the last example I wanted to show you. You see here the percentage of the population being killed by a particular epidemic or pandemic, and we are starting from the 14th century with Black Death, and then other epidemics and pandemics are going down. And you see that with every epidemic, humans are becoming more resilient. So fewer and fewer of us are getting killed by bacteria and or viruses. And the difference, when you go to the bottom of this graph, you see the difference between HIV/AIDS epidemic and COVID-19 epidemic. And that shows you clearly that those improvements, the resilience improves dramatically from the 14th century until the 20th century, but the improvement between the 1981 and 2023 is the smallest, right? So we see this plateau behavior, that we had dramatic changes in survival as we go through the ages, and then in the 20th century we see a very, very flat or small change, and that suggests a flattening of this performance as well. So this is the last slide I wanted to show you. Let me know what you think about all those interesting things. I think it's worth of discussing, and yeah, let me know what are your thoughts, and maybe you have a completely different explanation to all those facts I presented today. Thank you for your attention, and one more thing about what you just saw. It's very important to understand that those changes and plateaus we discussed in the presentation, they cannot be explained by neo-Darwinism or a theory of evolution. The time scale is too short. We cannot expect human beings to adopt genetically at such a fast pace. So this is beyond what currently biology can explain. And when you read different experts and biologists, they try to explain those things by saying something, oh, maybe we reached the limits of human brain or human body. Okay, but what does it mean, and why it didn't happen before? Just happening as we speak. So it's very puzzling that they can inject a term, and this term somehow magically have to explain what's going on. So no, those adaptations or lack of adaptations, because we obviously hit certain plateaus in many areas of human activity, those adaptations cannot be explained by evolution or those plateaus, and we don't know why they happened. And just using a term that we reached the
limit of human performance or limit of human brain? Yeah, of course we did, but why it happened and why it did not happen before? So that's something to think about. A comment underneath. Let me know what you think. If you don't agree with the numbers, those are publicly available records. They are not beyond the paywall. Everybody can look them up. The links will be included in my description. So have fun, comment, and prove me wrong. Thank you very much, and see you soon.